Hi everybody, welcome back. This is another introduction to 3D modeling that I'm going to just draw a couple of quick shapes for you, and I'm going to more or less show you how something large like this automatic stop box, how you would go about starting to draw something like this. Now this has a lot of different measurements on it. There's the whole page is filled up with dimensions, and I know that it can look like it's quite a big mess here, but I'm going to hopefully show you some ways that you can try and break this down into some smaller chunks and make it so that you're not really trying to draw this entire thing all at once. You're just trying to draw parts of it at one time. I just want to show you that this is what we're aiming for, this model here, and I have it oriented the same direction as this picture as well for this right-hand side view here. And what I want you to look at and see is that there's a bunch of shapes that make this whole thing up. We're going to draw the base today, and then we're going to draw the large cylinder that's going across here. But then all the rest of the shapes that get put into place here, they're simple shapes. There's things like rounded shapes up top here on top of squared off or rectangular shapes. And the whole thing is just built with either adding or subtracting shapes from one large block. So I don't want you to look at this and get overwhelmed or anything, but this will hopefully give you a pretty good idea as to how to break down a larger project and break it into pieces that are a little bit easier to work with. So now if I go to my fresh drawing page here, we're going to start, we're in 3D Basics in AutoCAD. This is a 2017 version. I've shown you some other videos that have some basic information about how to get around and how to orient your work in here. So what I'm going to do is just start with the drawing over here. I'm going to draw a box, and as we look at the picture here, the base of the object here, the automatic stop box, is a rectangular base that is 7 inches on one side, 5 3/4 on the other side. So again, looking at these dimensions down here, we really need to take a look at how each of these line up and then what else they line up with. So I'm going to draw a box that is 7 inches by 5 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch tall over on my drawing here. So I have the box tool, so I'll specify the first corner. We're going to go 7 inches in this direction, hit the tab to get to the other box down here, then we're going to go 5 3/4, and we're going to hit enter on both of those, and then measuring high, we're going to say 3/4 again for the height. So now we have this object. It's in wireframe. You can choose what you would like to use, which is a little bit, whatever is easiest for you to see. I prefer shades of gray. It's a good way to see the edges that you're drawing. Every once in a while, if you really need to see something on the inside, X-ray is a pretty good one to see, so you can see the outside shapes and then the inside as well. But I'll leave it back at the shades of gray. Now, we're going to ignore a couple of things on here. We're not going to worry about the filleting just yet, these rounded edges here, and that's specified up here. The fillets and rounds are 1/8 of an inch. We're not going to worry about rounding the edges or anything yet. All of that is kind of a last step once we have most of this stuff drawn. What I'm going to look at is trying to put this big cylinder into place and running down the length of this whole piece here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to know where the end of this cylinder is actually going to land. And if we start looking at some of the measurements that are down here, we see that from this edge, the outside edge of the base of the thing, 2 7/8 of an inch in, we come to a line, and then that line is 3/8 of an inch away from the base edge, and then in the up direction, we're looking at this measurement right here, 1 5/8 of an inch up over to here. So what I like to do to help me orient where this piece is going to go, I'm going to draw a couple of lines that are just going to end up being some building lines that's going to help me put a line this way, and this way to make sure that I end up with the cylinder right where I want it to be. So we're going to draw that now. 2 7/8 from one corner. And we can just use the line tool to do this. Make sure that you're snapping and drawing in the right direction. 2-7/8. Now 3/8 of an inch this direction. Oops, that was not right. So there's the end of it. Now I want to draw in this direction 3/8 of an inch. And now I want to draw up. We have to make sure that we're going in the Z direction here. Sometimes you have to reorient your view to be able to get that Z orientation. And that number was 1 5/8. Okay. So what we've done is drawn a line. This point right here should be where the end of this cylinder lands. Now, this cylinder has a corner taken out of it, and on the other side it has this big flange that's coming out. But basically the entire way through we have one big cylinder, and we have an internal ream, and then we have the outside dimension. We'll do all of these things separately. So the outside dimension of this is a little difficult to find, but if you take a look at this being one big cylinder across here, the only clue that we really have is this little circle on the outside edge of this view over here. So this flange that's sticking out has 2 holes that are 3 inches apart, and because that curve comes around down through here, and if we could zoom in close enough we would see a little crosshairs, that means that the outside edge of this circle part is 3 inches apart, and that's the center of those holes that go through here as well. So to me, that tells me that this cylinder that goes the whole way through here is going to be 3 inches in diameter. So we're going to come back to our drawing, and off to the side, we're going to draw this 3-inch diameter cylinder. So we can grab another tool up here, cylinder tool, specify my center point. Now, I'm doing radius right now. I can also hit D for diameter, and then specify that it's a 3-inch diameter. Now, distance long, if we go back to our drawing and look at this measurement right here, 7 3/4, that line comes from this edge, 7 3/4, the whole way to this edge. So I'm going to say that this cylinder is 7 3/4 of an inch long from the complete outside edge to the outside edge over here. So I'm going to go 7 3/4 long here. 7-3/4. Now, obviously the cylinder is in the wrong orientation and the wrong position, so we're going to utilize the gizmos up here. There's a move gizmo and a rotate gizmo, and I find that both of these work together really well to help you orient things into place. So I'm going to click on the rotate gizmo, and so when I click on my object, I get these orbits, basically, for lack of a better word. And if I pick the green one, I am allowed to rotate this cylinder in any orientation in that direction. If I pick any of the other ones, say the red one, I can orient it in any direction this way, and blue would be spinning around like this, but that wouldn't make any sense for a cylinder since it's round. So I'm going to pick the green one, and I'm going to rotate this direction 90 degrees. And now that I have the cylinder rotated that way, now I can move it. I'm not going to use the move gizmo, but I'll use the move tool here and specify my base point, which is the center of the cylinder on this end, and then specify where I want it to go, which is right here. And every once in a while the 3D drawing doesn't look correct when you try and move it, but when I click this, it will pop right into place, and now that cylinder is right in the place where we want it to be on our base. So now there's a couple of things that you could do at this point, and I would maybe caution you against some of them. What I would say is that we would need to make these two pieces the same piece, like one whole thing, and by doing a union we can make that happen. We can combine 3D solids to make them one object. What I would say for this moment is to just not do that immediately, just in case you need to make some modifications to one or the other. You can always do this unioning at the end where it's a little bit easier. You can just click a bunch of objects and click them together. I want to do one last thing while we're here, and that is to clip off the top of this part right here. So you can see that there's a 2-inch deep chunk taken out of the top of this cylinder on this side, and we know that it starts from 1 inch over here. So this should be really simple to make and show you how to do the subtracting away from parts on here. So we're oriented in the right view. I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to come up 1 inch. And that just gives me the flat spot where I'm going to go to. Now, if I come over here and draw a box, and as long as my box, I don't care how big it is, as long as it's wider than it needs to be this way, and I just need to make sure that it is exactly 2 inches deep. I want to make sure that that happened the right way. So exactly 2 inches deep, and this direction can be as long as it needs to be, as long as it's wider than our 3-inch cylinder there. So I'm going to say something about there. And then taller than how much we're cutting away. So as long as it's up about there, it's fine. Now what I'm going to do is move this box into place right on top of that guy. So again, I'll grab my move tool, select the object there. I'm going to click on the center point, the midpoint, and then I'm going to move my mouse up to the top of my line and click that in place. And now that box, since it's 2 inches in this direction, it's floating right in the right spot. Now I just need to do the subtraction. So now I'm going to subtract, click the object I want to subtract from, hit enter, click the object I want to subtract, hit enter. Now I chop that piece away. So in a couple of quick steps there, that's trying to show you how you can take this big object and start breaking it down and taking a look at just all the measurements and trying to figure out how to get all of those pieces to line up. Things like this flange, I might do a little video on separately just to show you that you should maybe draw this separately off to the side and then bring that up into place instead of trying to draw it in place. It's much more difficult to try and draw it when it's in place. So hope you got something out of that. If you're finding value in these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe, take a look at the other videos that I have on my channel, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.